Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be starting this masterclass in just a couple of more minutes. Thank you again. Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining for today's masterclass on building leadership capacity to maximize performance for K-12 schools. This masterclass is delivered by Mr. Craig Johnson. And before we deep dive into today's masterclass, I would request Dr. Palak Sheth for his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ritu. A very good evening to all. On behalf of our founder, Chairperson, Mrs. Neeta Ambani, and our Chairman, Mr. Ambani, I extend a very warm welcome to you for this special masterclass on building leadership capacity to maximize performance of K-12 school. This is a new initiative where Jio Institute, along with Reliance Foundation, Dhirubhai Ambani International School, and thought leaders in the areas of school education are coming up with some detailed conversation through our masterclasses. Jio Institute is a multidisciplinary higher education institution set up with a philanthropic initiative by Reliance Group and Reliance Foundation. The institute is dedicated to the pursuit of excellence by bringing together global scholars and thought leaders and providing an enriching student experience through a world-class education and culture of research and innovation. Our founders' firm belief in the power of youth to transform India has been instrumental in setting up Jio Institute. They also believe knowledge is the foundation for generating human capital that will contribute to innovation, new idea, and creativity. Jio Institute currently offers a one-year full-time residential PG program in the areas of artificial intelligence and data science and digital media and marketing communication. We have also launched this year 2 additional programs, again the PG in sports management and PG in journalism, and the applications are open for that program also. We are fortunate to have today with us school education leader and extremely well-known thought leader on school education, Mr. Craig Johnson, to deliver our first masterclass on building leadership capacity to maximize the performance of K-12 school. By the end of this masterclass, you will gain valuable insight and practical skill to promote excellence in your K-12 school, and you will be better equipped to inspire, engage, and lead with the confidence these schools. I once again welcome you all to this masterclass and look forward to host all of you at our campus in Ulve, Navi Mumbai. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. I would now like to just do a brief presentation on what we're doing here at Jio Institute. Dr. Sheth very briefly mentioned about the programs that we have launched here. So just allow me a moment to talk a little bit more about and show you just a few glimpses about what Jio Institute has been doing, what Jio Institute's future plans look like. So Jio Institute is founded on the personal pledge of both Mr. and Mrs. Ambani, who strongly believe in the power of education, and not just education, but overall holistic development of an individual via education, sports, culture, heritage, and so on. Jio Institute aims to be an exemplary Indian academic institution with international repute. We want to build a vibrant ecosystem for research, innovation, and entrepreneurship, be India's testbed for frontier research, prepare the next generation of leaders, and significantly contribute to the advancement of Indian society. Our governing council is led by Mrs. Ambani, and the other members of the council are experts from different fields, from industry, from academia, from the social sector, and so on. Our chancellor is Dr. Mashelkar, and our vice chancellor, Dr. Deepak Jain. In addition to our governing council, we also have the Global Advisory Council. All the 4 names that you see up on your screen are institution builders, renowned researchers. Dr. Shammu has been associated with Caltech. Dr. Sachs, a researcher in the field of sustainable development. He's with Columbia. Dr. Subra Suresh, he just finished his tenure as the president of NTU Singapore, and Dr. Levin is the longest standing president of any Ivy League, and he was associated with Yale. We spoke about our chancellor and our vice chancellor. Our provost is Dr. Guru Sami Ravichandran, who before joining Geo Institute was associated with Caltech for over 30 years. And you just heard our project director, Dr. Sheth. Geo Institute has launched 2 programs and is launching 2 new programs. We have academic advisors for all our programs. Dr. Frank Mullen is our advisor for the Digital Media and Marketing Communications program. Dr. Larry and Dr. Shailesh for our Artificial Intelligence and Data Science program. Dr. Sutton is the mentor for our Sports Management program, and Dr. Taneja for our Journalism program. Dr. Keller is helping us build Geo Institute's hybrid digital library, and he's associated with Stanford. Geo Institute has a clear 15-year strategic plan in place, wherein we will have around 7 schools at the end of 15 years, a 10:1 student to faculty ratio. We're currently at our campus in Ulve, which is built on 52 acres, but works for our upcoming campus in Dronagiri, which is around 20 minutes from where we currently are, is going to be built on around 400 acres. We will have around 10,000 students at the end of 15 years. This is how we've divided our 15 years. We're currently in our startup phase where we're focusing on launching postgraduate double programs, as Dr. Sheth was mentioning. Our next phase will be our growth phase, where we will convert our disciplines into full-fledged schools and finally into our maturity phase. This is just a small glimpse of how our Dronagiri campus is going to look like. I'm just going to quickly show how our Ulve campus is coming around. These are the 2 buildings that we have. This is our academic block. Just going to quickly run through. These are the classrooms, the media lab, the production control room, a computer center, an AR/VR lab, the library, a silent reading space, a seminar hall, high performance athletic center, indoor sports and recreational facilities, a tennis court, a basketball court, an outdoor cafe, faculty offices, boardrooms and conference rooms, cafeteria, executive dining areas. This is how a residential block looks like. These are student residences. Every floor of the student residence has a lot of collaborative spaces, a lot of discussion rooms. Every floor also has a seat-facing lounge or common areas. Again, breakout spaces that are available. These are just how our faculty suites also look like. As I was mentioning, that Geo Institute is focusing on launching postgraduate programs, which are new age programs in line with current industry trends and future needs. They are all multidisciplinary in nature, and which also include interdisciplinary learning with a idea to provide holistic development to our students. Just to give you a perspective about the things that we've done and what our future programs look like, we started with 2 programs. We're launching with 2 new programs in journalism and sports management. And in coming years, we will have programs in new energy, new materials, life sciences, and fintech. A little bit about the 2 programs that we've started. The PGP in AI&DS has around 60 students. These are the kind of faculties and advisors that we have. This is just a class profile. We have 25% female, 75% male with average work ex of 4 years. This is our digital media and marketing communications cohort. Again, 60 students. These are the kind of faculties and advisors that we have. This cohort also has around 28% female students and 72% male students. The 2 new programs that we're starting, which is sports management and journalism, are 2 very niche programs, and the kind of courses that you see are sports in marketing, sports in finance, legal issues in sports, and so on. So very, very focused on the functional aspects of sports management. These are our illustrative list of faculty and advisors for our sports management program. Moving on to our journalism program, we have different courses, very traditional as well as new age courses for our journalism program. So if you see traditional courses such as reporting and writing, and new age courses such as immersive journalism are also available in this program. These are our list of faculty and advisors for our journalism program. We also have these holistic learning modules, which are basically 21st life century skills. Geo Institute focuses on research a lot, and it is our endeavor to be a research-focused institute. And from day one, we have worked towards that. Our full-time faculty is currently working in the research of computer vision and medical imaging. I very briefly spoke about our hybrid library, which is physical and digital. We have collaborated with Stanford to create this library. We already have been able to get around 65 million plus company profiles, 4 lakh plus books, 2 million plus working papers, and so on. These are just the kind of databases and softwares that we have included in our library. So this was just a little bit about Geo Institute. For more information about Geo Institute, I request you all to visit our website at www.geoinstitute.edu.in. Before I hand over, this particular forum to Ms. Sharma, I'd just like to tell everyone that there is a Q&A tab that is available on your screens for any questions that you have with respect to the Institute or with respect to the masterclass. You can do so. There's also a chat available, and we will be closely monitoring for any comments or feedback that you have for us. With that, I once again welcome you all, and Ms. Sharma, over to you.
Thank you, Ritu. Good evening, everyone. And welcome on behalf of Reliance Foundation. Reliance Foundation was established by Mrs. Nita Ambani in 2010, and we work across the country in areas ranging from rural transformation, education, health, sports, arts and culture, urban renewal, and more. And so far, our work has touched the lives of over 66 million people. Empowering the youth of tomorrow is a key focus area for Reliance Foundation. And as part of that, we work very strongly in the area of education. And we work across the education ecosystem, from early childhood education all the way up to tertiary education. And our focus is very much on developing innovative models for delivering quality education for all. So building the capacity of teachers and also education leadership is a key part of the work that we are currently doing and that we want to focus on in the years ahead. One of the initiatives that we've been doing in this space to support and recognize and celebrate teaching excellence is the Reliance Foundation Teacher Awards. And over the last few years, we have recognized 1,800 fantastic teachers across the country. Now, through collaborating with Geo Institute and other partners, our aim is to do more to develop various inclusive opportunities for teachers and education leadership capacity building all across the country for all different types of schools. This series of masterclasses is the first of these initiatives, and where you'll get a chance to hear from leading experts in the field from across India and across the world. And we really hope that you enjoy this first session tonight and the subsequent series that will happen over the coming weeks. So I'd now like to pass over to Dr. Abhimanyu Basu, who's the Dean and CEO of the Dhirubhai Ambani International School, who'll tell you a bit more about tonight's session and the excellent speaker that we have. Thank you. Abhimanyu?
So you're on mute.
I didn't change that. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sharma, and welcome to this masterclass. As we often say, that a school is as good as its teachers, and Mr. Johnson agrees with this statement. However, he would like to add that the impact and the efficiency of the teachers is greatly dependent on the skills, dispositions, and the capabilities of the leaders at the school. With the fast-changing education landscape, in the context of K-12 schools, with the implementation of NEP, large number of international schools coming up, there is a need for education leaders to focus on their capacity to shift culture, effective collaboration, strategize vision, and inspire their community. And I think the good news is that effective and inspiring leadership can be taught and developed. That's what this masterclass and the Geo Institute Educational Leadership Program intends to do. With our first one, where Mr. Johnson, who has been my next door neighbor for more than 10 years at ASB, about building leadership capacity to maximize performances. Craig Johnson was the inaugural recipient of the prestigious International Innovation and Leadership Award. He has 30 years of experience of leading international schools and educational organizations in US, Brazil, and India. And most recently, Craig has served as the head of American School of Bombay. Through his 3 decades of educational and leadership experience, Craig has worked closely with visionaries and practitioners to design, create relevant, meaningful, and impactful innovations in the education space. Currently, Craig works at Roundglass, a global company which is committed to individual and communal planetary wellness. Craig leads their educational division, where he and his team partners with the schools around the world to redesign teaching and learning journeys through the pedagogy of art, nature, and play to enhance the holistic well-being of students. Craig is also now associated with Reliance Foundation and Geo Institute for spearheading the launch of various leadership development initiatives. So over to you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Abhi, and thank you everyone on the panel, and welcome 789 people. For the record, 2,500 people registered, and you're the only ones who followed through. So congratulations on being here. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm going to just bring my screen up and we'll use a PowerPoint to guide. Ritu, does it look like my PowerPoint's up?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, let's just jump right into it. I am going to put my clock on because Ritu has been very disciplined, and she's told me I have only 35 minutes to make the initial presentation and then Q&A. So here we go, 35 minutes. Welcome, everyone. My name is Craig Johnson, and I just love and enjoy talking about leadership capacity, leading to maximizing performance for school teams and school culture. So I thought we would begin today with a quiz. Now, clearly, we can't hear you, I can't see you, but I want you to really take this seriously. You should all have a notebook out, a pen out. The next 35 minutes is going to be a real download on things for you to follow up on. In 35 minutes, it's going to be sort of the tip of the iceberg. But I want to begin with a quiz. It's a fill-in-the-blank quiz, and it's from Jack Welch, an American businessman. I'm going to show you the quote, and there's going to be 2 words missing. You try and figure out what word you think would fit there and really make sense of the quote. Here we go. Before you are a leader, success is all about blank yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about blank others. Each of those blanks is only a single word. How might you think of filling in those blanks to make sense of Mr. Welch's quote? Before you're a leader, success is about doing something for yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about doing something for others. Now, if we were a smaller group of people, I would ask for some feedback, but since there's 800 of us, we're going to just say the blank number 1, before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. Before you are leading, your success is about growing yourself to put yourself in a position of successful leadership. Once you are the leader of a team, of a division, of a school, of a university, whatever that might be, your job then becomes to grow others. So before you're a leader, you grow yourself. Once you are in a leadership position or you feel like you have the dispositions of a leader, your success is all about growing other people. And that is literally what we're going to do here today. I want to begin by sharing one piece of bad news and one piece of good news. The bad news is schools across the world, completely agnostic, schools are some of the worst organizations to develop leadership. It is very, very hierarchical. When you are a teacher, you're a teacher. When you are a director, you're a director. You're a coordinator, you're a coordinator, a principal. Schools do not have within their DNA systems and structures to develop the next generation of leaders and actually enhance the current leadership's ability to be successful. That's the bad news. That's not about your schools. That's not about Indian schools. That's just about schools. Schools are not designed to be a system for leadership development. The good news is that 837 of you are here today, knowing that this particular master course was leadership capacity development and maximizing potential. So right now, the Indian ecosystem, or whatever ecosystems you're coming from in Brazil or the United States to participate here, you're already better off than you were half hour ago because you said, I want to develop myself. I want to develop others. Bad news, but we, the people here today, are the good news. My plan for the next 35 minutes is to present to you and share a little of my thinking on 5 questions. First of all, what is leadership capacity? I'm going to begin by making sure we all understand what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to share some numbers, some real data on why is leadership capacity important, and why is developing leadership capacity important, and why are we trying to maximize the potential of leaders within the adult community of schools. Then, like all of us really like to give me 2 tools, Craig. Just give me 2 things I can walk away today and begin to really use and delve into tomorrow. So once I've made the case, then we will introduce 2 tools that how you might assess the potential, your own potential, and the potential of others, and then how you might develop it. When we're done with that, I'm going to focus on drive, on motivation, and try and answer the question, what truly motivates people? Because motivation is one of the most important criteria and dispositions of evolving leadership. And in the end, I'm going to say this is not the end. This is the beginning. This is the first master course for educational leadership that the Geo Institute and the foundation are supporting. This is the beginning of your journey from good to great as individuals, teams, and organizations. Your task, my dear colleagues, you have a task today, is not to be passive. I know it's difficult not to be passive when you are listening to a webinar, but you need to engage. You need to capture. You need to write down questions. You need to think about following up. I am going to throw things at you, and I'm going to delve into them very superficially. If it hooks with you, if it resonates with you, you need to then take that journey further. That's your task today. Think of questions. Let's engage with that after the presentation. I'm going to go back to this quote by Jack Welch. This in itself is the definition of leadership capacity. Leadership capacity within yourself and leadership capacity within those you work with, your teammates, and the people around you. The phrase of leadership capacity really is given credit to Linda Lambert in her book, Leadership Capacity for Lasting School Improvement. Much of what I'm going to share today, I've taken from all over the place. Articles, TED Talks, books, conversations, my own personal experience. I put a lot of that in there. And so the leadership capacity that Craig Johnson and you two, am I?
Yes, you are audible.
Oh, okay. Am I coming through okay? Oh, we have somebody else's mic on. I'll wait for that. Are we good? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. If you can't hear me, please interrupt. I don't want to be, going on and nobody hearing what I'm saying. I'm in Spain, by the way, and there's a snowstorm outside and it's really windy. So electricity has gone out a couple times, but we're going to move forward. So our leadership capacity, the reason we're here today is for yourself and for the organization. So when you think of developing leadership capacity for yourself, this is it. Your individual ability to change the way in which you lead. I like to think of most highly effective leaders as having a toolbox of leadership skills. When a certain situation needs a hammer, they go get the hammer. When it needs a screwdriver, they get a screwdriver. If it needs a saw, they get a saw. The hammer is not the solution to every single leadership conundrum or issue that arises. So building our capacity is to change our ability to change the way we lead and to develop new and more effective ways to get results. Leadership, management, professional ethics is about getting the result. Now, that's a whole nother master course about how do you identify the most important results you want. But right now, let's assume we have those. For the organization, you can develop leadership capacity within an organization, within teams within an organization. This is a broad-based, skillful participation in the work of leadership. Broad-based, skillful participation, not broad-based, passive participation in the work of leading. Okay, not just in doing, but in leading, and a way of understanding and contributing to a sustainable school improvement. Schools that do not grow fall from good to mediocre. Schools, educational organizations, like any business, needs to constantly become more relevant, constantly more innovative, constantly addressing the needs of today's students, meeting them where they are, getting them to where they need to be in the best way for their particular learning style. And teachers need to be leaders. Leaders need to allow teachers to grow. That is leadership capacity. And that is why you are here. And this is one major course that we're going to be offering in several different units, but this is an overview. So making the case, why is it important? I'm going to share 2 statistical facts about schools that are screening for leadership capacity development. Number 1, 75% of schools, if you consider schools a workplace functioning teams, are rated dysfunctional. This is not India, it's not Canada. This is a Harvard Business Review at random schools. They had a criteria to assess functionality, and 75% of the schools were rated dysfunctional. The second statistic is 43% of the schools today, post-pandemic, have the intention to reshape their organizational structure. Now, let me show you how these two are literally a perfect storm. Number 1, it's a 4-point rubric. If schools didn't score 3 out of 5 on all of these, they would fall into a dysfunctional category. Committing to their annual calendar, doing what meetings there are, doing what professional development there is, just following through on the calendar, adhering to their values, agreed upon norms, and holding people accountable. When they're assessing the school, they're looking at what the values say on the poster and on the website, and what is the actual daily culture of the school. If we say we're going to act in a team like this, are we doing that? And if people are not adhering to our values or our agreed upon norms, are we holding them accountable? Are we meeting our constituents' expectations and the services we promise them? What do we promise people? What do they get? How satisfied are they in that? 75% of schools are not scoring a 3 out of 5. And lastly, schools, are they aligned with the mission and the values and the goals? If I ask a janitor, if I ask a cook, if I ask an elevator person, if I ask a teacher, if I ask a parent, if I ask a 15-year-old, what's the mission? What's the value? What are we doing this year as a school? Do people know? Are they aligned? Are they supportive? So the first part of this is 75% of schools are kind of categorized as dysfunctional when it comes to healthy teaming, community building, collaboration, etc. And to make this even scarier, post-pandemic, almost 43% of schools are saying, you know what? We're going to go flatter. We're going to decentralize decision-making. We're going to extend the authority and control to teachers, which is beautiful. But if teachers have not been developed to make decisions, if they haven't been developed on how to lead a functional, cohesive committee towards results, then the chaos will not only continue, it will actually exponentially grow. So these 2 data points to me is making the case. But if you take a look at even beyond making the case, I'm going to throw some out here for you. I'm not going to spend much time on them, but here are 4 negative numbers that, again, support you, 888 people, to develop yourselves, develop your colleagues, develop your teams. Here we go. Just very quickly from Harvard Business Review. 40% believe their organizations don't collaborate enough, and when they do, it's not done well. This is your takeaway. I've got to figure out how to enhance the collaboration of my team. This is what I'm sharing this data for. You might not be that 40%, but 40% of the organizations say we don't collaborate well. We get in a room, we have an agenda, we leave the room. It wasn't real collaboration. It's not done often enough. 86% of people surveyed from educational institutions cite lack of effective collaboration and communication as the reason for failure. We didn't know, we didn't agree, we didn't follow through, we weren't involved, Nobody asked us. We have no voice. 86%. Again, what's your homework? What's your task? What are you hearing? What do you know? What do you need? Make the connections. You should be leaving today with a plan for tomorrow. 97% believe it's a lack of effective leadership within teams, whether it's the chairperson, whether it's the task force leader, whether it's the facilitator, the moderator. People just say, you moderate, you facilitate, you lead. They have not been given the opportunity to grow and develop those skills. And lastly, it's trust. 45% of people say it's the lack of trust that's the biggest issue. I would contend, because I visit a lot of schools, most schools where there is a lack of trust, it's actually a lack of knowing. They don't know the leader. They don't know the strategy. They don't see action. It's not because they've done something distrustful. They just don't know. Trust needs to be earned like respect. It's not just given. So supporting the case for what we are doing here today is developing your leadership capacity, the leadership capacity of your team to maximize potential. This is data you should be digging into about yourself and about your organization. Building the case, some promising data, all right? So here we have the promising data is that teachers spend more time collaborating, 50% more than they did 5 years ago. This is great. We've already restructured ourselves post-pandemic to get together. Now make that effective. Collaboration work takes 60% of teachers' non-instructional time. Instructional time is when you're with your kids, but in the scope of a day, the time that is non-instructional, most schools are saying 60% of that is being put into collaborative work. In order for collaborative work to work, teachers need to be developing their leadership skills to facilitate, to make decisions, to put the best thinking on the table, to be discerning listeners. All of those skills are within the potential, the capacity of a leader. Teachers are on twice as many teams. This is great cross-pollination. We want the math teachers and the English teachers to be together. We want the utility people and the kitchen people to be working together. But again, just putting people together does not in any way ensure an effective conclusion or good results. It needs leadership capacity development. Well-led teams demonstrate 21% more effectiveness over their counterparts. No brainer. Teams that function well will outperform other teams. If your school is made up of several highly functioning teams, your school outperforms schools that they are compared to. Teams that rank in the top, we've all been on those top 20% teams, which we just loved working with. And we've all been on the bottom 20%. Like when that meeting ends up in our schedule, we're like, oh, I don't want to go to that meeting. But people that are on highly effective teams come to work more often. They stay longer in the job. And of course, they're healthy mentally, spiritually, and physically. And the last promising case, the data, is employees that work with well-led teams stay in the organization. Everybody wants to work with the team that functions highly, that's rewarding and curious and fun and challenging and positive and lifting, as opposed to toxic, demeaning, negative, etc. So your task right here, looking at these 6 positive indicators, is if you are a leader of a school, if you are a teacher in the school, how much of your time is collaborative? What are you doing with that time? What are you doing to enhance yourself as a teammate and enhance those around you? So the case is made. We need leadership capacity development in individuals and schools and teams. Made. Now what? How do we assess the potential? I'm sharing this book here by Erasmus Ankerson. Great read, easy read, go read it, The Goldmine Effect, How to Crack the Secret of High Performance. I want to begin, again, I'm using Ankerson's research, but also my own and other people's as well. I think you can test for leadership capacity. You can do it in an interview. You can do it by observing your teachers and your teammates. You can check references, and checking references doesn't mean talking to their boss. It means talking to their colleagues, talking to the people they supervise, and also ask people to self-assess themselves. I'm going to give you a rubric. It's 10 points. I'm not going to talk about 5 through 10 today. Each and every one of these is an individual class that we can get together and we can take a look at and say, how does one assess for an individual's grace under pressure? Meaning when there's pressure, do they rise gracefully to deal with it? How do we test to see if people are truly respected by their colleagues? These are all individual conversations and lessons, and we can create strategies to assess that. For the purposes of today, I'd like to focus on the top 4. Just briefly again, take a snapshot of this, take a screenshot of this. I'm giving you a rubric to go back to your organization, go back to your school, go back to your team and say, how much capacity do we have? The ability to effectively delegate. I believe that these top 4 are what defines great and highly effective leaders from others. Highly effective leaders have a gift for effectively delegating responsibility. They know how to assess and use the strengths and the passions of their team. If you have 5 people in a room and all we are doing is giving one individual ideas and this one person has to execute on everything, you have greatly diminished your ability to be effective. True teams have an equal puzzle-like delegation of responsibility and ownership. So highly effective leaders, the ability to effectively delegate. We can test this, we can assess this, we can find out who in our organization has this gift. Judgment. There's a book that I'm going to get to at the end of this by Jim Collins, Good to Great. And they interviewed thousands of CEOs and heads of companies in all different domains. At the end of the day, they said, what separates the really highly effective leaders from others? And the number 1 in their study was judgment. The ability for someone to assess where there's an opportunity and take it, to assess where there is a risk and mitigate it. Their ability to judge conversations, judge opportunities, judge people. That is once again, you can test for it. You can assess it in people, you can assess it in yourself, and then you can develop it. Self-awareness. I will say the following. If you have ever worked with a really bad boss, I would contend they did not know they were a really bad boss. I would contend they had very low self-awareness. They thought they were fine. We know better. They were not effective. They were not healthy. They were not building leadership capacity for us. To be self-aware, you have to know your strengths, and there are ways to get to know what your strengths are. Even if you are struggling with that, what are your areas of growth? And most importantly, how am I as a leader perceived by the people around me? Or if I'm a young, aspiring leader, how is my potential as a leader perceived? And lastly, motivation. The test for leadership capacity is you need to figure out what makes them tick. Why are they motivated? What is it? Is it money? Is it winning? Is it the mission of the school? Is it enhancing other people? What is it that drives you? Because as a leader, you need to know what drives you so you can make sure that is behind everything you're doing, and what drives the people around you so you can enhance their efficacy. So right here, what we have is a rubric for testing for leadership capacity. I could meet one-on-one with you and I could talk to your references. You could do a self-assessment. I could walk around the building watching you. I could interview you, and I could tell you on a 10-point scale, these are your strengths. These are your areas of growth. I would rank you in the top 20% of an individual who has leadership capacity. But you don't have me. You have yourself. You have each other. Make this work. So once you've assessed yourself and your team and the people around you, how do you then develop that? Away from that rubric, I have boiled down lots and lots of research to my favorite. These are Craig's favorite. If I was going to develop a leader, I'd put them on 5 tracks, 5 plans, simple 5. Number 1, you want to develop yourself as a leader, go take on more projects. I didn't say take on too many projects. I said take on more projects. And one of the big questions is, how do I find projects in my organization? You don't have to necessarily find them. You can create them. You're in the organization. You see where the gaps are. You see where the opportunities are. You might see a risk. Why don't you design a project to address those and then talk to your leaders and be given the autonomy to run with that? In other words, you need to do an internship in leadership. You want to build your capacity, take on projects. Number 2, find mentors. I would say that I have literally really, really strong mentors, about 12 people in my life that have really mentored me and guided me. And then I have those other people that have been in my life and I have seen them do what I do not want to do. I observe leaders all the time. I say, why did we do that? Why didn't they do this? Find mentors. Finding mentors is easy because people like to mentor. If you find the right person, they can't wait to mentor young aspiring leaders. So find them. And you can find them in TED Talks. You can find them as authors. You can find them in your community, in your church, in your mosque, in your synagogue, in your school. You can find them in the parents in your community. Finding mentors are easy, but then sit down with them and say, tell me some stories. Help me solve this. I would track people to say, I want you to inspire and I want you to empower other people. In other words, you want to develop your leadership capacity. Why are only 6 kids coming out to watch the football games? Go inspire kids to come. Let's see how you can motivate people and empower others. Nobody seems to be excited about a certain project. I want you, your job is to inspire and empower people to do this sustainable energy project. Again, with the mentor piece, I would put my mentees, if I was mentoring you, on a weekly report out saying, what did you learn? What did you watch? What reflection did that cause on you? I watched this, I read that, I followed this person. Keep learning, but not passively, actively. Keep track. What did you learn from Mr. Johnson's masterclass on leadership capacity? What 3 things did you learn? Now, what are you going to do with these 3 things? What action are you going to take to develop yourself? And lastly, resolve conflict. I see the 2 of you having a problem. I would very much like to mediate this. I know it's not my business, but I want to mediate this. Or you see broken glass, or you see the elevator is dirty, or you see that the dustbins are not big enough. Whatever it is, find a conflict, find a problem, and solve it. Leaders are defined by their ability to see something, address it, and result in better than what it was. So fine. These are the 5 trackers that I would put you on if we were in a leadership capacity development class. Take on your projects. What are they? Find your mentors, maybe connected to that project. To get that project excited, you're going to inspire and empower people. While you're doing this, you're going to start solving conflicts and all the while keep learning. Okay, right there, I'm going to check my clock, see where we are. We're at 27. What I want to do right here is I just want to take a 30-second pause. And I want you to use the Q&A to drop some questions in there. When we get to the Q&A part at the end, our panelists will pick questions to ask and we'll facilitate responses to them. But again, since we're talking about leadership capacity, there is research to suggest that if you were to pick one criteria to delineate high-functioning leaders and learners from lower ones, it's their ability to ask good questions. The biggest question, most important question organizationally as a leader is why? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why aren't we doing something? Why? So just take 15 seconds, put some questions in there. Our moderators will get to those later. I now want to focus on the number 1, which was drive. And I want to do so by inviting you to read what is a very, very powerful book by Daniel Pink called Drive. And his research is answering the question and offering the surprising truth about what motivates us. And he has a very clear equation. So if I'm telling you the research says someone's motivation is one of the highest indicators of their effectiveness, their satisfaction, and these are the people you want, highly motivated, then you need to know how to crack the motivation conundrum. How do we get people motivated? Because one recipe does not meet all needs. Daniel Pink says this is the equation for driven people, highly motivated people. There are three variables that equate to motivation: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Very ambiguous phrases. His research suggests if you want to find a highly motivated person, they probably have a great deal of autonomy. They are working within the domain of mastery, and they're very clear on why they're doing what they're doing. More specifically, autonomy comes to delegation. That was, again, one of the skills we talked about, where a leader that has 12 things to do delegates 3 and gives them the autonomy to deliver on those. Not just manage the project, lead the project. No micromanagement, a clear mandate. You have 6 weeks, you have $1,000, you have 2 teammates, and this is the expectation at the end. How you get there is up to you. Manage your own time. So autonomy. Number 2, mastery. People are highly motivated when their skills, their dispositions, their passion aligns with the work. They aligns with the task. This is a task that requires verbal communication, strong facilitation skills, a deep learning on data. And if this person has that, then this task, they can master it. If it requires high-tech skills, working alone, and short time frame, and you give it to someone who is a bit of a procrastinator, very much a people person, and doesn't have high-tech skills, motivation drops. So give them autonomy, but within the domain of their mastery. And clearly, what is in this for me? Why am I doing this? Why, the why of the task? Why is this important to the department or the company? So what Daniel Pink says, we have a lot of work to do at schools. Remember, schools that are not moving forward towards relevancy and innovation are falling backwards. So if we know we're moving forward and we have all this work to do, how can I give people leadership opportunities that they have autonomy, that plays to their mastery domain and is clear on purpose? Because we want them to be working on challenging, developing, exciting, and fun things. This equation right here, sit down with all of your direct reports, sit down with yourself and say, what are the jobs you're working on? Do you feel autonomy? To what degree? Do you have the skills necessary, or do you have a colleague with the skills necessary? Tell me again why we're doing this and what impact this is going to make on our department and our school. Have these, what I call drive conversations with your team. And lastly, I want to leave us with a thought of going from good to great. And let's see if I'm running over. We are 3 minutes. Okay, here we go. So we've kind of taken a look at building the case. We've kind of taken a look at how do you assess for leadership capacity. We've taken a look at how do you develop leadership capacity. Then I zoomed in on one particular criteria of a highly effective leader, which is motivation and drive. I gave you a bit of Daniel Pink's research on that. And lastly, I want to leave you with one of my favorite and probably most iconic books in my leadership journey. And it's Jim Collins's book, Good to Great. I just reread it last week to prepare for this. And it's a whole seminar in and of itself, a whole semester. But I want to share just a small bit with you. And I'm pushing you to go read about this. Read the book, read the articles on the book, read the shorter PDFs about the book. But if you are here to build your leadership capacity and leadership capacity of your team and create a higher and more effective organization, this is what Jim Collins presents. Today, I only want to look at the first 3. He talks about organizations that go from good to great. And he studied 1,500 different organizations. And he finally came down with about 10 organizations that he considered truly great compared to their competitors. And then he studied these 10, and he's sharing with us the 6 things all 10 of these had in common. These are the 10 things that great organizations had in common. I want to share briefly with you 3. You can Google each of them and read much more. But it's this. The first one is a level 5 leader. And in the simplest of terms, he defines leaders on 5 different scales. A leadership level 5 is someone who is incredibly effective at delegating and holding people responsible and putting him or herself or their self behind the scenes. These are people who their ego is much lower than their caring for their peers and for their organization. It's not about them, it's about us. It's not about me, it's about the team and the organization. So that's what we're trying to do. In our program, we're trying to develop high capacity for leaders to be level 5. Number 2, first who, then what? Again, just because you have 12 people on a team doesn't mean you're going to do better than someone who has 6 people on a team. Go back to drive. First who, take your person on your team, and then what? What task would they have autonomy in? What task can they master? Where is the purpose clear for them? Give them that, what, and have them run. Organizations that have a bunch of people all doing the same thing without personalizing their journey are not going to be as effective as a small, agile team of people that says, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? What do you need from me? Go do it. And the third thing I want to share about the journey from good to great is confronting the brutal facts. Organizations that do not look inside themselves, leaders that do not look inside themselves, not have a sense of self-awareness, are not going to grow. So I'm going to leave you with this last confront the brutal facts with the following. Let's assume today that you, me, and our teams have not maximized their potential. Let's just say that. We are confronting the brutal fact that I, Craig Johnson, have not developed my leadership capacity to where it could and should be. And none of the 950 people on the screen have done it either. Let's begin there. And then we say, now what do we do? And take a look at what we've talked about, dig in deeper on your own, and good luck on your journey towards developing your capacity and the capacity of your team and your organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Craig. I think that was truly very insightful and enlightening. And we've received quite a lot of questions, and I'm just gonna try and club them in if possible, so that we're able to answer more questions. So the first question that we've received, it reads that, what are the different leadership qualities, that a leader in the field of education have, which are different from leaders in another field? Are there any specific qualities that a leader in the education field should have, which are different or should not have?
I'll tell you, Rich, that's a great question, because I am in this inflection point in my career right now where I spent the last 30 years leading schools. And now I'm sort of like in the corporate world leading educational initiatives. So it's a really good time for me to talk about this. I think 3 things I'll say. Number 1 is, if you're in an educational organization, you must have the disposition and skills to communicate with people of all ages, from young children all the way to the adults. In the corporate world, we're oftentimes only talking to an adult, and we're often talking to people that understand our domain. If I'm an architect, I'm talking to architects. In school, so number 1, you have to have the skill to talk to people of all ages. Number 2, I think that listening, really active, discerning listening, is a very important skill for educators and anyone in the human business, right? We're not talking about machines. We're not talking about profit margins. We're not talking about what's coming out at the assembly line. We're talking about children. We're talking about families. So you really have to have that discerning, active hearing, right? And I think the third thing is you actually need to study on developmental psychology. You actually have to understand the human nature, which is a skill that many corporate worlds don't have to have. So multi-age relevancy, active listening, and really the psychology of families and children, etc.
Super, sounds great. Just a follow-up question to that do education leaders need to be experimental with their leadership style?
Yes, you do. Now, again, I want to say the following. I am not talking about a heart surgeon with a live patient, hands in the heart, saying, hey, I think I'm going to try something new. I am not in any way suggesting that. But I am going to say the following. Sometimes educators and educational leaders, they take themselves too seriously. We're like, no, that won't work. That will really screw up on Friday, the schedule won't work, or they may not understand fractions in time. Guys, step back. We're talking about schools. We're talking about learning. We're talking about children development. Whatever we're trying is going to be better than what we are doing because we're trying. We may choose to throw it out the window, but we tried. So I am always about, you know what, you just need to try. Throw 20 ideas out there, 2 of them will stick, keep 1 going.
Great. I think another type of, so I think there are a lot of leadership types that, where our chat is popping up with. Another is that, is it important for leaders to take decisions more strategically when it comes to data-driven decisions? Is it important for educational leaders to take data-driven decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question because data has definitely, really submerged itself into our field. Again, I want to say one more thing. Let's not take ourselves too seriously. I have worked for boards at many schools around the world that the board members are corporate people. And so they want key performance indicators and they want return on investment and they want everything, tracked and targeted, etc. I think schools need to be very clear on, we're going to track 4 things with data. We're not going to track 200 things with data. And we're going to make a lot of qualitative decisions. We're going to make some quantitative decisions, but we're going to track, number 1, the level of engagement of the child. We want our children to become more and more engaged as they spend time with us. So we're going to track engagement. And there are instruments out there and you can take a look at that, right? Number 2, I would definitely take a look at just like academic growth, right? Academic growth in 1 or 2 areas, math, reading, whatever. Let's track the growth. Third one, social emotional growth. How confident are they with themselves? How are they engaging with others? Are they getting up on stage? Are they defeating that fright? And ultimately, I think, how happy are our kids, right? Kids are not going to be happy in a school that's not challenging them. They're not going to be happy in a school that is too rigid. They're not going to be happy in a school that is not meeting them at their needs. So joy and happiness is an important data point to track. If I walk into a school, Ritu, and I say, tell me some information about your kids, some data, and they share data on joy, on social emotional growth, on academic and cognitive growth, this is what I want to see.
Super. So I think there are a lot.
Let me say one more thing. Let me say one more thing about that. I also want to, not warn, but I guess I'm going to say warn schools. Don't get caught up on exit data like college placements and test scores if you don't have entry data. What you should be excited about is when the kids came to us in 6th grade, where were they and where they are now? What is the growth? Because if they're coming in the top 2% anyway, and then they're getting into the top 2% universities, then what did you really do? So again, be very careful with the data you pick, how you present the data, and how you interpret it.
Thank you. I think there are a lot of questions. I'm just going to club a few questions which basically are trying to, what people are trying to ask you is that A, how important is it to have the right team? B, how do you pick a right team? C, if there are conflict of interest within your team, then how does a leader kind of tackle the situation?
Yeah, well, I think you begin with that Jim Collins, first who and then what, okay? And again, we're in education. We're not in NASA. We're not building spacecrafts, okay? We're in the human business. We're focused on growth of children. Most teachers, 100% of the teachers in the world, if they're teaching 6th grade, they kind of have the content. They kind of know what a fraction is, or they wouldn't have a job. So let's not take a look at the what. Let's take a look at the who. So I think you begin with the values. What is the value of our organization? Do we believe in interdependency? Do we believe in diversity? Do we believe in advocacy for self? Do we have a large, impetus of student voice and choice? Is our population very transient? You take a look at the culture, then you see what you have. Look inside and say, so Craig, you fill this particular space for us. And then you go out and hire people that are aligned with your values, aligned with your mission, good people. Education needs good, compassionate, empathetic listeners. And then you can train for the job. There are very few jobs in education that you can't be trained for if you have character and dispositions of strong value, mission-driven, and ethics. I think, once again, we take ourselves too seriously. I'm in so many job fairs for teachers, hiring teachers, and these amazing educators are getting passed up because they haven't had experience teaching PYP. PYP can be taught. PYP can be experienced. A strong, ethical person who cares deeply about children can't be taught. So it's a fine balance.
And what are your thoughts about, how to kind of tackle the different conflicts of interest that your team has? Or maybe there were certain questions of people being, judgmental or cynical, or,
Yep.
how do you kind of take care if there are differences of opinions within your team?
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to channel one of my very close mentors. Her name is Fiona Reynolds, and I've worked with her in many situations. I'm going to channel her like this. Put your big boy and girl boots on. In other words, stand up for yourself. If there's a bully on the team, that was, remember, one of those things I talked about, holding people accountable, right? Sometimes there are people on a team that are such bullies that the boss is afraid of them. And therefore, they just run rampant through the China shop, breaking everything, and everyone lets them get away with it. The minute you let that happen, you have sent a message to your entire community that our values are fake, our mission is fake, we are intimidated by bullies, we are not going to hold people accountable. And then you begin a slippery slide down to mediocrity. I think I've said this before. I take great pleasure as the head of an organization firing people because I'm doing it for the organization. And I rarely fire people because of merit. I can upskill merit. I can send you to another class to learn. I fire people for character. I fire people for ethics. And I feel really good about it when I say you are no longer welcome in this organization because you are not aligned with that. So I think what I would tell people that if you have someone like that, and we all do, you need to sort of like grow up and say, I want to work in a place where I am appreciated, where my voice is heard, where we're doing good work, or walk away. Have the courage to say, this is no longer the place I want to be, and walk away. You walk away with your integrity intact, you feel good about it.
Super, thank you. I think just another, complimentary question to that is, how important is communication when you're working in a team, and not just within your team, but there was a statement that education leadership is generally top down. So how important, A, do you agree with that statement or not, and B, how important is communication within your team and just to all stakeholders possible?
Yeah. So right now we are in a conundrum in the world, right, where communication is so easy. Right? Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, emails, Facebook, blah, 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 right? So a lot of people in schools right now are falling into one of two buckets. Number one, the bucket is, I didn't know that. Why is nobody telling me that? How do I find that out? And the other bucket is, bus, stop, ho gaya, no more communication, right? So I think what it is you need to figure out as an organization, what are the 3 to 4 essential communications? Like, is it a weekly bullets from the principal to the teachers, high level, what goes to the parents, and then optional communications, right? At the American School of Bombay, we were able to have parents and teachers opt for what communications they wanted to receive. Do you want to receive the communication from the athletics department, from the music department? Do you want to get the daily menu at the cafeteria? Do you want these things? No, 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 no. Then you get what you asked for, but then you also have to hold people accountable to say, hey, you didn't ask for that communication, so don't hold it against us. So I think communication, by the way, communication is like in real estate, they say location, location, location. I say in leadership, communication, communication, communication. That doesn't mean over communicate. It means communicate key things to key people at key times.
Thank you. The other question, there are a lot of questions. I'm just going to try and club them in. The next question is that, you mentioned about, how it is important to kind of create opportunities and find projects and, develop that leadership skills. So I think a related question is that how do you identify, there are gaps in administrations? And then is it to do with how we benchmarking ourselves with others, or what are the ways in which we can identify this?
Okay, great question. So let's assume for a moment that this question is coming from schools that maybe don't have strategic plans. Like, let's just say for a moment, you're just a regular school going about your regular business. You don't have any ambitious strategic initiatives, right? It's just regular business as usual. How do you find opportunities to develop your leadership capacity in an organization that doesn't actually have new work? Okay, so we'll come to that next. This is what you do. You have leadership team meetings with your business manager, your head of security, your head of maintenance, your principals, all of the leaders. And you ask them on a huge butcher paper across the room, boards, tell me everything you do. Every job you have. I stand out at the front gate. I welcome everybody. I take the attendance. I have lunch duty. I supervision. I proofread reports. Whatever it is, put it all out there. All right, spend 2 days downloading the nitty-gritty micro operational work that every leader in the school has. Then you have it. Then you create a gallery walk for any of your faculty that would like to take on a leadership opportunity. They walk through, they look at it, you answer questions about it, they take their notes, and then they have a week or so to prepare a bid for work. So they'll write to me and say, Craig, I would like to be responsible for supervision at the bus drop-off on Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of you. Okay. Now they're talking to the drivers, they're talking to security people, they're meeting the parents, they're getting to know the kids. They've taken that responsibility. Now I have 2 mornings where I can do something different. So number one, every school has opportunities because we want our leadership to have white space. The schools that aren't on a strategic plan are the schools that didn't have white space to think about it. They're watching the bus drop off. So let's start the leadership capacity cascading of responsibilities. Every time I've done this, I have found the future principles. The future principles come in. Now, if you're at a strategic plan, then you put out the end results and you create task forces, and then that pushes you forward.
How lovely. So I think, bottom line is to just take the initiative and just to do it. That's a great thought.
Well, think of it like this, me too. I have 3 grandchildren, a 4th one is coming next week. And both my older grandchildren they're 3.5 years old and they love to cook.
Oh,
why do they love to cook? They love to cook because, take cooking as leadership, right? Because ever since a young age, we got them the special tools that wouldn't cut their fingers. We would bring them in, let them play with it. We would get them taste it with their fingers. We'd let them smash the eggs with their hands. So we gave them the opportunity to learn a few of the tasks to making the lasagna. They're not making the lasagna yet, but before they came, I had to mash the eggs. Now they mash the eggs. And while they're mashing the eggs, I can go do something else. And they're passionate about the kitchen now. They love being in the kitchen.
How lovely. The next question is related to change management. Of course, when we talk about education and educational institutions, there are a lot of stakeholders that, we have to take into consideration, whether it be students, parents, board, your teachers, your own team. So change is generally, a little difficult task. A, do you think, is it difficult? And B, how do you manage change?
Okay, we're going to have to take that into a whole different semester course on change management. No, truly, change management is the Achilles heel, right? I mean, you can have all of the ideas in the world on a strategic plan, innovation on your school, doing maker and doing, project-based learning and doing whatever. But if the community of teachers and parents are not sold and not bought into it, then you're going to fail. So I'll say the following. When you know change is coming and when you know change is necessary, you need to start bringing people along early on. Like if you're going to move on a report card, that has been the same report card for years into a standards-based report card, and all of a sudden you don't have the parents on board, it is going to be a disaster. If you have not trained the teachers, it's going to be a disaster. I've worked with schools around the world that are moving into open learning spaces. They're redoing their buildings and opening into new learning spaces, but they're not bringing the teachers along the way. These are teachers that are used to teaching in small cubicle classrooms with desks, and suddenly they're giving them this new space. It's not going to work. In fact, it's going to backfire. So in change management, the earlier you get on the communication with the constituents, the better. In other words, if you are going to move into open spaces 2 years from now, you need to start having your parents in small groups, reading the literature, watching the video, and then data to support the change. Nobody wants to change just to change. Let me show you how these 3 skills, collaboration, active listening, and autonomy, increased in open classroom spaces, right? Every parent and every teacher wants to do what's right for the kids. There's no parent in the world that says, I want the school to do something wrong for my children. They don't, right? But also in education, we're the one business where every constituent believes they know how to do it, right? A person doesn't walk into a doctor's office and disagree with the doctor, right? They say, no, I think you're wrong. It's like, no, here's the data, I'm right. But they walk into educators all the time and say, you guys are doing this wrong. So we have to bring them along. And also I would say you have to figure out what's the big change pieces you want, and what are the fights you want to have, and what do you not want to, and what are the non-negotiables. I had a colleague who worked for a school, very, very effective, but he used to tell new parents coming into the school, which is very much against my style, but kind of I learned from him what I don't want to do. He would say, welcome to, the American School of Zimbabwe. You are now admitted. Your voice and your choice ended in the admissions office, right? And in other words, we don't want to hear, we'll do what we want to do, and you don't have a voice. That is, you're setting yourself up for one thing, no change. You're just going to ride. And so I think, once again, early communication, identify the big wins, have the data, bring them along, be active listening, soothe their concerns. Change management.
Super. And I think, the 2 points that we spoke earlier about being an experimental leader and about being a leader who, takes data-driven strategies kind of really work well here. You want that change here, you need to kind of balance the both, and then, decide change. Great. Okay, this is a very interesting question. It says that schools often take over the personality of their leaders. How does one safeguard the school from it and make it a place that has a rich confluence of diversity?
Right. I think, once again, for people that are interested in that question, they should go back and take a look at Jim Collins's work around a level 5 leader, right? He says things like the level 5 leader, sometimes in an organization, people aren't really sure what they do, because they're not out there, they're behind the scenes, they're supporting, right? So my question also is the following. At the American School of Bombay, I became the head of the American School of Bombay. They had a mission statement. One of the reasons I took that job is that mission statement spoke to me. So it may seem to outsiders that the school's reflecting me, when in truth, I was drawn to the mission statement. At the American School of Bombay, the mission statement says, we will inspire children, we will develop skills and courage and compassion, and we will have them pursue dreams and enhance the lives of others. I'm like, sign me up. That's why I got into education. So if the school is pursuing of dreams and enhancing others, and I'm talking about it a lot, it may be seen that that's Craig's vision, when in fact it was the American School of Vision way before I came in. But I think this person is asking the question of sort of like a draconian leader. It's their way or the highway, etc. And so we know schools in India have had those same leaders for decades, and it is their property, etc. And all I can say to you in those organizations, I'm sorry.
Fair. I think our next question is related to how do we measure our effectiveness? How does any leader measure their effectiveness, or maybe the change that they're bringing is actually helping off the stakeholders that are affected by it?
Yeah. Well, I think, once again, just to go back to the data, You know, I mean, if we're going to take a look at effectiveness in social emotional development of our students, those are easy enough to do it. On the leadership capacity, you have to create a baseline, right? So let's just say that Ritu, you decide to become my mentee and I become your mentor, and we identify 2 areas of strength that you have. Clearly, one of them is synthesizing, and I can clearly tell you are a good synthesizer because of the way you're putting these questions together, right? And the other one is you are a very gregarious, you know, and very visually energetic person. So those are your 2 positives. And then we identify 2 areas of growth. I don't know what they are. Let's just say one is organization and one is written communication. What we would then do is I would create a 360 on you. And I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I would talk to a few of your colleagues and a few of your supervisors and I'd say, where would you mark Ritu on these? And then we would create a plan for, okay, written communication. I'm going to start studying on it. I'm going to start practicing. I'm going to start doing it. And then we would go back and start saying, have you seen an increase? So finding someone's effectiveness is easy if you have a baseline. Where was I and where am I today? I have not grown. I'm therefore, it's not working, or I have grown. So once again, I would say everyone leaving this, you need to think a lot about creating a baseline on your leadership proficiencies now as you develop moving forward. I have my evaluations, Ritu, from my supervisors from like 40 years ago. I've kept them. And some of the things I was very seen as an area of weakness 20, 30 years ago is now seen as an area of strength, because I was very disciplined to develop myself and my leadership capacity.
Wow, that's great. I think there is one question which says that, so of course, this masterclass is related to, you know, building capacity leadership in K-12 schools, but, you know, people just want to ask that, how different is it than managing or leading maybe an undergrad university or a postgrad university? Like, what are the difference between handling or leading like a school and then leading a you know?
Yeah. So I'll be totally honest with you. I didn't create this presentation from scratch. Okay, this is a presentation that I have put together from 3 or 4 different presentations. I've given these presentations to like corporates, Samsung, GM, you know, Nivea creams. Leadership is leadership. The examples I've been using to bring out the narrative have been educational examples. But if you look at the slides just as they stand, they cross all domains, all ecosystems, all industries. It doesn't matter. Leadership is leadership. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say something I don't often say in the company of 900 people. I think sometimes at the very head of organizations, people believe that the person leading that organization needs to have come from that discipline. The more I study leadership, the more I realize at the top ends of organizations, what they really need is leadership. The content space, they have people that have that, right? And in my last couple of years, I was blessed by working with people that were really world-class teaching and learning people. They really understood education and learning as it is today. So I wasn't really an instructional coach. I wasn't leading teachers in instructional pedagogies, etc. I was leading the leaders of people to develop themselves as leaders.
That's interesting. There are 2 questions which I'm going to probably clump. One, it says that how do you keep yourself motivated? You know, how important is it for leaders to, you know, kind of be motivated? And the second one is, how do you keep your team motivated? You know, one is yourself, and the other is, how do you ensure more accountability or ownership and just keep them motivated?
Yeah. Well, since this is school, I'll tell you how easy it is for us to stay motivated. I can't think of a discipline in the world or an ecosystem in the world that is easier for us to get excited than education if we remind ourselves why we're doing this, right? So it's very easy for me to get excited in the beginning of a day when I'm standing out by the buses and the little kids are running in, giving me high fives, Mr. J, how you doing? And I realize I am spending more time with these children than their parents. If that's not a motivator to do your best every single day, every single moment, then I think you're in the wrong business, right? I am not going to my job to produce cars. I am not going somewhere to produce pharmaceuticals. I'm not building roads, all of which are important. I have children in my school, in my class, in my hands, 220 days a year. So that's easy to be motivated. But I also think it's oversimplified. I think the way to motivate your people, your team, is to know them. I did a recent activity with a school. I was brought in to help build their team's capacity. They were not a highly effective team. And they had worked together for quite a bit of time. It was a school in Europe. And I went in, I ran an activity of how well do you know each other? Ritu, there were people that had worked together for years that didn't really know whether, do they have sons or daughters? I can't remember. You know, are they vegetarian or non-vegetarian? Are they from, and I was like, wow. If you don't, on a sort of Maslowian thing, if you don't get to know people at a human level, then how do you know how to motivate them with autonomy, mastery, and purpose? You know, so I think really bonding with your team, getting to know your team, but also I always say, I'm very friendly with my team. I'm not their friend, right? Because I'm the person who has to hold them accountable. I am the person who has to, you know, judge their performance. So I'm very friendly, but I draw that line between becoming friends with my coworkers.
I think you know, you kind of with a couple of statements, you know, answered a lot of questions, because I think there were a lot of questions that said that how do we manage people who are older in your team or younger in your team, and you know, and then just strike the balance between, and just to probably understand your team better. So I think
Yeah.
you know, that kind of helps.
Well, you know, just Ritu, to explain that, I used to think a lot about that when I was a young leader, right? So I became a principal like in my late 20s. So I started my career clearly as the youngest person on the leadership team, and I left my job at the American School of Bombay as the oldest person on the leadership team. So I have expanded all of those roles, right? And I will say the following. And in particular, India, right? India has a reverence for people older than themselves, right? I'm Craig G to you, Ritu.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that. And I would never replace that with anything, right? So there is that respect and there is that deference, that reverence, right? But at the same time, leadership efficacy is not connected to your age. I have seen highly effective leaders, 24 years old, and disastrous leaders, 60. So if we know that leadership and its impact is not connected to our age, that gives us the ability to sort of navigate that.
Absolutely. And I think that's what brings me to my next question, is that what is the best educational leadership style, you know, that you have kind of seen in your life? And I think, you know, because you've seen both sorts, young, old, and different. So what, according to your experience, is one of the best educational leadership styles that you've ever witnessed?
Well, I mean this when I say this. I have never seen a single style be the best. I've seen the best authoritative style given the situation. During the pandemic, we had to pivot our styles. In Latin America, because of the culture of Latin America, a certain style doesn't work there. In India, again, a certain style may not work in an Indian school. So I think that, once again, I'll say this, that the most effective leaders that can transition between organizations have a depth of styles they can draw on, right? But I would say two things about, regardless of what style you are, whether you're very authoritative, or you're very democratic, or whether you're consensus building, whatever your style default is the following. The people that work with you need to know three things. Number one, they need to trust you. And you can be a very authoritative person, but you are honest and you're doing it for the kids and you're pushing forward and you're not making promises. They trust you. Trust doesn't depend on style, right? Number two, so that they trust you. Number two is they know what values and what principles are tolerated and what is not. The most democratic, consensus building, compassionate, empathetic person needs to call the bully on it and say, just because I'm listening to you doesn't mean I'm afraid of you. Just because I'm listening to you doesn't mean you're going to get away with this. So, and that goes back to trust. If we know that the leader of our organization, our team, is holding us accountable, what is acceptable behavior for the adults, hold that, right? And then the third thing is, regardless of what your style is, you have to communicate. So I think that if you trust, and if there are lines that are drawn, and then there's communication, any of those styles should be effective.
That makes sense. We will just have a last couple of questions. And so, you've, of course, seen a lot of leaders, or you yourself have been, in a lot of positions. What kind of evolution, that you have seen in these, past years that you worked at? And what do you think the future of educational leadership kind of looks like?
Oh, great question. Well, the evolution has definitely become to flatten the organization. I think it's not just in education. I think in most organizations, you're really realizing, do we really need 5 levels of bureaucracy, So I think the flattening is there. And that really, I was talking to my leadership team about Linda Lambert 30 years ago when she came out with leadership capacity, and we were running those gallery walks with our faculty 25 years ago in Brazil. So I think how it's evolved is there are people that are doing more than just teaching in the classroom. Teacher leaders, they're being given opportunities to do that. And the more we can spread that out, sort of the better. The future of education, again, that's a whole nother course. But I see from the leadership perspective of the future of leadership in schools, I really think it is a lot about mentoring and coaching. I think that the leaders at the highest level are going to be mentoring and coaching and then making the final decisions about things, but really enabling and developing those below us to play in the decision-making, to play in the space to move our schools forward. So I just think it's getting flatter. And, the most successful flat organizations are run by leaders who are very clear about those 3 things: communicating, trust, and drawing the lines. I'm giving you autonomy to work, but these are where it's acceptable.
Super. So the last question for the day is on delegation. How important do you feel is delegation, and how do you decide within your team, as a leader, if this task can be delegated to a certain someone?
Great. Okay. I can talk about delegation forever. Let's do the following. At the beginning of the year, let's just be my level. Beginning of the year, let's say there are 7 strategic end results that need to get done to, the board of trustees has approved the strategic plan. They've given it to me, the head of school, to deliver. I have to be accountable to them. So I take our 7 end results, whatever they might be, whether it's starting a band program or starting getting a new pitch or creating a scholarship program, whatever it may be. I put it out there and I tell my leadership team, each of you needs to take at least 1 of these, or 2 if you want. Which ones do you want? Write them down on a piece of paper. Then they all come, and sometimes they all want the same thing, but you'd be surprised, not always. And then I begin to look at the skill sets and begin to map it up, and that's delegation. And that's the beginning of failure. Delegation without clear expectations and accountability is failure. So in other words, because you and I have never worked together, I'm going to say, let's have a check-in meeting once every 3 days. And after the first couple of weeks, I can move it to a week, right? And in those check-in meetings, I'm asking a lot of micro questions. You almost think I'm micromanaging, but I'm testing you because we've never worked together before. And if I delegate to you and I leave you alone and you fail, it's actually hurting you at times. Failure is great, but failure that didn't need to happen, if you just asked me a question, that's wasted failure, right? And then someone else I've worked with for a couple of years, I know how they're working. We can check in once every 2 weeks. But I think the success to delegation is put them on the board. Which do you want? That's autonomy. All right. I'm giving you the autonomy. And number 2 is the purpose. It has to be tied to the strategic plan. And then I need to support you. How often do you need? Everyone I've worked with has given me more or less information than I want or need. I have some people I've worked with that said, Craig, you don't need to know anything that's going on in that. And another person in the same position says, Craig, here's 26 bullets of what you need to know. So yeah, clarity of expectations, hold them accountable. Early on in the mentorship, be a little bit micromanaging in that, and then begin to back away. But the key to delegation is autonomy. Do they want to do this?
Super. I think, thank you so much, Craig. And I think one thing that, I have to tell you that especially the question and answer round, I think all your answers kind of tied together, you know. I mean, the best part about it is that, and also, you know, I don't come from, of course, you know, we are from Geo Institute, and then, but there are so many ways that, you know, even I'm taking away from this is because there are so many things that we can adapt, you know, and just normally, you know, how we kind of function and don't function. And I think leadership is something that at any level is something you can just inculcate in the way you work, you know, and which is absolutely great. So I think, I really enjoyed this just, you know, moderating this Q&A session as well, because every answer kind of, you know, made sense and one was tied to the larger picture that you showed. So thank you.
Well, Ritu, I have to give you credit for that, because like I said earlier, I am a big fan of good questions, and you really picked out, I know there was hundreds of questions in there, and you definitely picked out really good ones. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. And thank you for a wonderful audience, you know, who actually, you know, so patiently kind of heard the whole conversation, was so enthusiastic in the questions that you all, you know, asked wonderful questions. So thank you so much. Once again, on behalf of Geo Institute, Reliance Foundation, Craig, Mr. Basu, VP sir, everybody, you know, who you are with us. And thank you so much for joining us today. And it was such a pleasure to host you all. And this, I'm assuring you, this is one of the many, many master classes or sessions or workshops that we will be hosting for people. Please, you know, follow us on our social handles to be updated with the latest what's happening. And I think there were a lot of questions. We will share the recording of this session with everyone. So be rest assured, in case you kind of missed any part of it, you can, you know, have a look at it. So once again, thank you so much. Thank you, Craig, for such a wonderful, wonderful session. And thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening, lovely day, or good night, good morning to one and all. Thank you.